Hey guys, Chris here, and it's time, the unit planning guide for October and the next 3 months in War of the Visions. We're coming relatively fresh off Final Fantasy Tactics, so most people probably don't have much more than 20,000 visiore laying around, and that's if you haven't pulled for Ildira or Episode 3 Anakin Stern. But we have a ton to get to with this video, as you can probably see with all these tabs at the top of the screen. And I'll try and get through this as quick as possible, give you a quick breakdown of the unit or vision card, and my recommendations on whether or not you should pull on the banner based on the strengths and weaknesses of your account. If you guys like the video, thumbs up, big red button, and let's suplex this October guide right back into the Phantom Forest. First up, we need to quickly talk about Fenrir. This banner is almost over, so you've probably already decided whether you're doing the step up for this card and Esper or not. But the main question is whether or not you should purchase the extra shards for this card in the shop. And if you've been watching this channel for the last couple of months, you already know the answer. It's yes. It's always yes when it comes to top tier vision cards. Vision card shards are so hard to come by, and when you have the opportunity to buy these bundles while the card is featured, you should do it. So the short answer is, if you pulled Fenrir, make sure you pick up the extra shards in the shop for the 3750 visiore. This Esper and Vision card are really great for PvP, allowing you to target teams that focus on magic damage, so Rain, Ildira, Mediena, Kilphe, and they also make your magic tanks like Rain, Agrias, and Dario even better. It also helps a ton when it comes to PvE events that have units or raid bosses that focus on magic damage. Okay, let's move on to the main event, and that's Glaciela, and you've probably already seen her shards in the login bonuses for the month, and you've heard me mention this before, but Glaciela is, in my opinion, the single best overall unit on this list, and we'll talk about Kain here in a bit, but Glaciela does it all. She's fast, she does a ton of damage, has defense penetration, chaining, the whole 9999 yards. Remember when Lucia came out and she was basically the terror of PvP arena and raids, etc.? Yeah, I kinda see Glaciela doing the same thing. You don't really need a whole lot to make her viable, but she will be even better if you have the Dashing Over the Snowy Fields vision card and a +5 Ice Lance. But even without that, I think she's a rock solid, no-brainer unit, and you can safely drain visiore pulling on her banner without feeling like you've made a mistake. And then there's Laswell, and I love the Laswell character design, but I don't love that he's on the same banner as Glaciela, and my recommendation is pulling for Glaciela if you're going to pull during this week, but there are a few instances where Laswell might be better for you, and the first is if your account has a strong slash attack, like vision cards and espers, so you can really get a lot out of Laswell. And the second is if you do pull for Laswell, just make sure you plan on going gung-ho on the raid event for his Katana, because without it, Laswell's just kind of okay. And you guys already know how I feel about the raids, so I definitely frown upon the idea of spending 20,000 visiore to pull Laswell, so I can have the pleasure of panic farming a raid like I'm in the final scene of a Saw movie. Okay, now let's talk about Skar, and I'll just go ahead and lead off with this. After doing some more research on Skar and the upcoming units, Skar is the first of two trap banners in my opinion, and it's not that Skar is a bad unit. He's kind of like a lightning Mediena, it's just that I don't think he does enough different from the units that are already out there like Kilphe, Salire, and yes, Mediena. And sure, he's got some more versatility with this Staff Mage sub job and the Time Mage sub, so he can cover a couple of different roles on a team. And if you built up a strong Platinum Rod or Sage's Staff and have a high level Ramu and Trousseau cards, you definitely can make him a really strong unit, but it kind of feels like the developers just saw how strong Glaciela was and were like, we better cook up a quick, strong lightning unit to counter her, and then just threw Mediena and Kilphe into a blender, and this is kind of what came out on the other side. So my recommendation would be, don't pull on the banner, save your visiore for the upcoming banners. And now for Thancred, and in the last couple of planning guides, I kind of failed to mention that we get a return of Final Fantasy XIV smashed in here, and you'll see the return of Thancred and Y'shtola. And long story short, I wouldn't pull on any banner for Thancred, but if he's available for event currency again, absolutely jump on it. Knowing what I know now about how the game works, I really regret not jumping on the free Thancred bandwagon at the beginning of the game, but I wouldn't spend visiore on his shards. The reason being is I just don't think Thancred does enough different or better than a lot of the units that are already out there, like Orlandeau, Agrius, Delita, Warrior of Light, Engelbert. Personally, I just feel like there's too many other units that outclass him to justify spending visiore here as a free-to-play or light spender. Let's take a moment and talk about Howlett. I've seen people all over Reddit and Discord and YouTube comments asking, Howlett this and Howlett that, and when does Howlett come out, and should I save up for Howlett? And I gotta say, I really didn't get it, and the more I looked into Howlett, the more I really don't get it. Howlett's a unit that does some very specific things well, and I can see how this Rune Knight job will be kind of interesting as the game is out longer, but Howlett is just a pass for me. He does a lot of good things with increasing wind attack, increasing spirit penetration, but more importantly, reducing wind resistance, and that one right there is the big one because it allows you to raid chain with a wind team, which is really what I see to be Howlett's primary purpose. So if you've built up units like Lucia, Yerma, or Oldoa, Howlett will make these units and wind teams even better, but outside of this, I think he's a little too niche and more of a luxury unit than a foundation for building an account. And for this reason, I recommend passing on Howlett unless you can actually maximize his magic and wind damage output with things like a high-level Tetra-Sylphid card or Adelard's TMR sword, which increases magic attack for him. I did want to quickly mention the Aigeion vision card because of its interesting unit effect you have here, which is to increase the unit / attack resistance penetration. So because of all the different gear and vision cards out in the game right now, many units can beef up / attack resistance to like 50% or even more. So this card allows you to just negate that straight up. In addition, the party ability is a healthy 25% / attack and 15 accuracy when you max it out, so this card is just straight OP for / attack teams. And in addition, the Esper has water killer and / attack and pierce resistance. It's like the developers again went back to the drawing board on ways to counter Glaciela, realizing how strong she is and just painted a purple and turquoise Optimus Prime. This is another vision card and Esper combo where if they do a 10,000 visiore step up and you have a primary / attack account, definitely worth thinking about. And the bonus tip here would be Aigeion also has magic resistance on the Esper board as well, much like Fenrir, so that's very, very unique and very powerful. Alright, let's move on to Luasa, and in my last planning guide I compared her to a fire version of Lucia, which I stand by that assessment, but with a couple of main differences. First, she has the soldier sub-job, which Cabbage pointed out to me has Drain Force, which has some unique uses in the game, and Cabbage also pointed out that Luasa will absolutely melt ice units like Agrius and Laswell and Gilgamesh, having a master ability that increases damage to ice units by another 15%. Because of this soldier sub-job, she also has substantially more attack and damage than Lucia, and when I say substantially, I mean it. I was in Merlot's stream and somebody asked him directly about Luasa, and he did a side-by-side comparison of Luasa and Lucia, and it turns out Luasa will straight up do more damage than Lucia in almost every single situation. In addition, Luasa can do fire slash chains with Rain and Delita by using soldier abilities, and can do missile attack chains with Lucia and Mustadio using double gunner abilities. Of course, her drawback is that she's very limited by attacking up and down heights, having just the dual gunner and gunner classes and not the ranger class, but this drawback hardly seems that bad when you consider all of her upside. Luasa is a great unit if you can leverage any of these strengths or can beef up her missile attack, her fire attack, or ice killer even further. Just know that if you're going for her, you're likely going to have to avoid pulling on Final Fantasy IV. And speaking of Final Fantasy IV, let's talk about Cecil, Kain, and Rosa. Cecil first, and he should be available through a guaranteed step up, or at least he was in JP, so we could probably expect the same in Global. So this makes Cecil your cheap option for the event. Remember, we talked about cheap and expensive options for the Final Fantasy Tactics events, and Cecil's the budget option here. Despite him being a guarding paladin tank type character in Final Fantasy IV, in War of the Visions, Cecil's more of a bruiser style debuffer. The most comparable unit would probably be Aigeion, but without quite as many status effects and probably more tankiness. I believe he has more tankiness than Aigeion. My problem with Cecil is that most people by this point will already have a unit like Engelbert or Warrior of Light, Thancred or Aigeion, or other units that are similar enough to his kit that it's hard to justify spending 30,000 plus visiore for him. And again, it's not that he's a bad unit by any stretch, but kind of like Ramza, I don't think that he will have a significant enough impact for free-to-play or light spenders. Similarly, I'm really not that crazy about Rosa's kit either. Definitely an interesting mix between physical attack damage and magic attack damage, but the problem with being pretty good at both means that she doesn't really excel at either one. She's a combination ranger and white mage with her main job, and can sub white mage or black mage for additional support or damage. She also has abilities with Ice Imperil, which is actually pretty common by the time she comes out, so that's not actually that unique. I think Laswell and Mediena also have the same thing. Like Cecil, I just don't think that she's going to be impactful enough for a seasoned account to justify the cost. But unlike Cecil, I think she holds a lot of more value for free-to-play and light spenders because she has a ton of versatilities. Also, we would be remiss not to mention her TMR gear right here, which increases magic and attack by a whopping 50%, which is a massive damage buff when used on other characters who have higher innate magic and attack values than Rosa does. Personally, I'm just not crazy about Rosa, just because I've always felt that she's one of the weaker and less interesting female protagonists in Final Fantasy history, especially when you put her up against characters like Tifa or Terra, Ashe, Fran, etc. Lastly, we need to talk about Kain, and like Orlandeau in Tactics, Kain is probably the unit that most people will target from this event, and for good reason. He's kind of like a spear-wielding Ruined Stern or Venera mixed with Gafgarian. Basically take a few of the best elements from the best Dark Slash attackers in the game and then just stuff them into a Dragoon. He's got defense penetration, light killer, HP drain, and just general badassery, and these are all reasons to really like Kain. Just be prepared for the 40,000 plus investment of visiore that you'll need to max him out. But in addition, if you do grab Kain, you'll want to make sure you pick up the Demon Wall Vision card and Esper, which are pretty much made specifically to make Kain even better, so you'll have to set aside probably another 20,000 or so visiore just for this as well. This makes Kain a net 60,000 plus visiore spend, which is pretty cost prohibitive for light spenders or free to play, and especially for those who might already have Venera or Ruined Stern. I mean, I don't think you can even afford to consider Kain if you already have one of those two units. And this is why, particularly as of October, it's really difficult to recommend any of these Final Fantasy IV units for free-to-play players or light spenders, though I might change my mind getting closer to the event and I do a little more research on what their abilities do. Finally, I wanted to mention Christmas Macherie and Ramada because JP got these units last Christmas, and I wouldn't be shocked to see them release these two units in global with like added master abilities to maybe make them more viable or make them more up to date. In fact, I really think that we might see these two release either the week before or the week after Final Fantasy IV to cause kind of a visiore scramble for exclusive units. And I'm not saying this will happen, I'm just saying don't be surprised if these two are also dropped on global. And that's it, Moogles and Chocobos. What units are you looking forward to over the next couple months, or what banners and cards are you saving up for on your accounts? And don't worry guys, no girl endorsement at the end of this video, unless, you know, you guys want one, or because you like pizzas or grilled stuff or